Welcome to CJ Moneyway Media, a storytelling platform built brick by brick, where conversations become lessons and experiences become perspective. This is the mindset of a panther, moving with patience, discipline, and purpose. From podcasts to books to media storytelling, CJ Moneyway brings voices, journeys, and real conversations to the forefront. You're now listening to the CJ Moneyway Show.
What's up, my good people? Welcome to the CJ Moneyway Show. Today's guest is Tom Wall, Ph.D., wealth strategist, retirement income expert, and author of Permission to Spend. Hey, welcome to the show today, my man Tom, unfortunately from Massachusetts.
Can't help where you're born, man.
Hey, man, what's up, Tom, man? Appreciate you coming on today. So, Tom, man, let's jump into this, man. Where did your passion for life insurance and retirement planning begin?
You know, I started my career when I was in college at 21 years old as a financial advisor. And I can tell you that was pretty challenging at those times when you're a 21-year-old kid asking people with big money to give it to you. So learned a lot of stuff the hard way early on. But, you know, I had some reasonable success. And I would say as early as a year or two into my career and some of my studies, just got very fascinated with this puzzle of, you know, not just how much do you need to retire on, but how do you spend it so that you can actually spend your last dollar on your last day on earth. And in reality, most people, even if they're successful and have millions of dollars in retirement, they're terrified to spend because they don't know how long they're going to live. They don't know if there's going to be major healthcare shocks. They don't know if the market's going to crash 7 times. And because of all that uncertainty, they end up just hoarding their wealth. I mean, they're multimillionaires, but they're spending nothing because they're just terrified. So I got really fascinated about, you know, what do we do about that? How do we actually help people free up their capital so that they can, you know, live on all that they've worked 40, 50 years to accumulate and put aside? And that's really where, you know, my book comes in. And that's where a lot of the speaking that I do for financial advisors and beyond, you know, teaching them ways to, you know, shift the risks out of people's portfolios and give them the peace of mind and comfort to enjoy what they've spent a lifetime accumulating.
Man, that's interesting that multimillionaires hoarding their money. You know what I'm saying? Like you say, they scared to spend it. And here it is, some of us out here that ain't got money like that, just spend it wildly. You know, and if we got the multimillions, it's different about the mindsets that people have, man. So let me ask you this, Tom, man. Where are clients being underserved in today's financial world?
Well, financial literacy is a big deal right now. I think a lot of people don't have financial literacy. They're not even sure what to do. I'm 44. When I was growing up, there was no curriculum in high school, college, anywhere that actually taught you how to balance a checkbook, basic savings in a retirement account. It was all this high-minded finance and business curriculum, but no one ever taught you that stuff unless your parents did. So that's the basic. But you know, I find for people that have done a little bit of research, have saved a few dollars, the research stops at investing. It's just, you know, how do you invest money in the stock market? How do you put money aside so that it grows? And it never talks about what happens after 65 or after, you know, the day you retire. What do you do then? How do you spend it down most efficiently? How do you actually position your assets so that you minimize taxation over time? You know, a lot of people just blindly throw money into their 401k at work if they have that. But that creates this tax time bomb. You know, it's all money that goes in pre-tax, and you're potentially putting yourself into very high tax brackets in retirement at a time when you can't write off the kids, or if you own a business, you don't have those business deductions anymore. So it's kind of lazy advice that most people get. And frankly, I think most advisors are kind of lazy with it too. They just, you know, put people in financial accounts and allocate their money between stocks and bonds and kind of move on to the next client. So that's where they're underserved, I think, is it's very few advisors are having the full conversation of insurance and investments and, you know, putting protection first in place so that bad things along the way, like market crashes, divorce, getting sued, all those things you're protected against so that you're not completely derailed when bad things happen.
So let me ask you this, man. You said something that was interesting. You said that the 401k, you know, they just shove it in the 401k, but then you get into a higher tax bracket. Now, when you know, like when you take it out, when you retire, whatever, you know, is it a one-time penalty, or are you saying that this is something, you know, a tax bracket that you just stay in based on the money that you got out?
Well, you know, your tax bracket is determined by how much money you earn. So, you know, the common wisdom is if you're earning good money while you're working, you won't need as much money to retire on. So you should defer taxes until retirement and then take the money out at a hypothetical lower tax bracket. But the reality is that's not my dream. My dream is to retire like every day is a Saturday. I
Mm-hmm.
want to go spend that money. I want to go play golf. I want to go eat out seven nights a week. I want to go travel. When you think about the lifestyle that we're hypothetically working toward, that's just not the case. So the issue with, if there is one with a 401k, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, that's a great place to put money. A lot of times your employer will match it. So you're getting like a free immediate return. It's great. But when the money comes out, if you pull $100,000 out of that 401k, in many cases, that's taxable like you earned $100,000 at work
Mm-hmm.
at a time when there may not be, mortgage interest or children or things to write off against it. So that's just one issue, but I think a lot of people just blindly save money into these accounts because it's easy. It comes right out of the paycheck. It was a wonderful, in my opinion, creation for most people. But I think the good advice comes in, how do we layer in insurance or other more tax advantage vehicles so that you have choices and options and flexibility, no matter what some future Congress decides about how wealthy you are and how you should be taxed, or no matter what president at the time is waging war and moving markets. That's the issue, is not just taxes but also volatility. If you have money in a volatile portfolio that's going up and going down, you've got to time those distributions just right, effectively knowing when to sell, and that's a very, very difficult proposition.
Man, I've seen people do it. I've worked with people that do the stock market. I got a cousin that do trade. Man, that's a hassle. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be on it. Like you said, you got to know when to sell, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's going up and down. Okay, should I go now? There's some people like Bill Gates, they stick with it. And although how far I go down, they wait till it to come back up. But see, I ain't got money like Bill Gates, man. I'll probably freeze, Tom. You know what I'm saying? Buy, sell. And so let me ask you this, Tom, man. What's your take on the infinitive banking system, being concept?
A lot of the work that I do is actually with advisors around whole life insurance, and specifically whole life insurance issued by dividend paying, mutual life insurance companies. The infinite banking concept, to oversimplify it, is effectively just overfunding these policies. These whole life contracts actually allow you to put in almost unlimited amounts of money and have it taxed kind of like a Roth IRA, where the money goes in and it grows, income tax free as it grows. So the infinite banking concept basically says, you got to spend some time, you got to spend a few years at least doing it, but get as much money into these plans that the IRS will allow. Get your money compounding. You've got the benefit of life insurance on top of that. Life insurance is a tax-free death benefit and drives a lot of the tax-free nature of the policy. And then we borrow against it along the way, as opposed to borrowing from a bank. So the idea of infinite banking is that, you can borrow against your whole life policy, maybe buy a car or put a down payment on a house or buy a part of a business. And as those things generate cash flow, you pay it back, as opposed to paying a bank back. I think sometimes it's overhyped. I think there's a lot of people that probably are misleading in the way that they present it. Sometimes because they're unscrupulous, but I think most of the time just because they're uneducated on some of the nuances to it. But that's a big part of what I do, is I consult with very high-end advisors trying to build some of these plans for business owners and entrepreneurs on the way up. And frankly, I've never really thought of it or called it infinite banking, but I have sizable whole life insurance policies in my portfolio, and I use them constantly. I think I'm not that rich. I've just moved a lot, but I just bought my fourth house with it. And when I've sold other ones, I put it back. Or when I get a good bonus at work, I'll put it back. I funded 2 businesses with it. So it's one of the rare places where you can actually get really substantial bond-like returns, very conservative, guaranteed growth, but have complete access along the way. And usually when the IRS gives you a tax advantage, like in a 401k or something like that, there's some very strict strings attached, like how much you can contribute. You have to wait till 59 and a half to take it out without tax penalties, required minimum distributions. If you're too rich and too old at 73, you have to start taking money out. And whole life has none of that. So it's a powerful vehicle, especially for entrepreneurs, as a tool to use, because entrepreneurs often don't have those, company sponsored retirement plans available to them unless they set them up themselves. So we see it used a lot. I use it myself.
So let me ask you this, Tom, man, before I go to any questions, because that's pretty interesting. I know a lot of people want to buy 4 houses or just one house with a whole life, with whole life or fund one business, man. So before I go anywhere else, where can we find you at, man? Where can we find this information where people can get in contact with Tom Wall?
Say the best way is just to find me on LinkedIn. I post a lot on there. I've got quite a following. I've got a number of websites. Most of my work has actually been with financial advisors. But if you go to tomwalltalks.com, that's probably my main website where you can kind of see some of the places that I'm speaking, some of the programs that I have for advisors, and also Permission to Spend. Permission to Spend is available on Amazon, but there's also permissiontospend.com. I think over the next year or two, I'll be building out more of a direct to consumer focus where I'm actually teaching individuals about some of these strategies and how they can put that safety in their plan that a lot of advisors or their own advisor may not be talking to them about.
Man, I think that'd be cool. Hey, check out Tom at tomwalltalks.com. And he said he ain't hard to find. He on LinkedIn. You can be one of his many followers that he already had. Hey, thanks for that, Tom, man. Hey, so let me ask you this, Tom. How do you respond to critics who call whole life a poor investment?
It's not an investment. And when you look at it, where it fits in someone's portfolio is an alternative to cash when you think about funding it that way. An alternative to maybe money markets or bonds or the safe stuff. On top of my whole life, I have a tremendous amount in the stock market. Most of my money actually is in the stock market. I own a business. I have real estate. People get too much into the this or that conversation. And what I found in all my research and all 23 years of experience working with very high-end advisors is the magic comes when you have it all, because they all work together in their own ways. Like I said before, we don't know what the future holds. So a good example is if you retire, let's say you got $1 million and you retire, and then the market loses 40%. Now you've got $600,000. That retirement is now jeopardized forever. You might not have enough money to retire on. And it's at a time when you might have to start selling things. Like you might actually have to start selling some of those assets to live off of. So in my example, if you then sell $100,000 to live off of, now you got $500,000. You literally 1 year later have half of what you started with. And that's unacceptable. That's not an acceptable plan. But frankly, that is the plan of most Americans that are just blindly throwing money at their retirement accounts and not thinking about what happens after. So where whole life fits, it's not about being an investment. It's about being a buffer asset, we call it, or a non-correlated asset. So in that same example, because I put money in whole life, let's say I showed up at retirement with 800,000 as opposed to $1 million. All right. But I got that same $200,000 in my whole life cash value. And now the market crashes. That whole life cash value goes up in value every single year. It cannot go down. So I know that in that policy, I've got 2 years of income that I could live off of without ever having to sell my portfolio low or lock in those losses or worry about the rest of my retirement. It sounds almost too simple, but it is that simple. And the investment world has been doing it for generations. I mean, they use just putting money in cash, like actual, cash, like a bank account. But whole life, once you start to understand it, these policies over time should get you, 4, 5, 6%, maybe more, but totally tax-free and totally guaranteed to rise. The only question is how fast. So it's like this perfect non-correlated asset not being correlated with your volatile portfolio. So that's really where it fits. It's not that it gets you a better return necessarily than you can get elsewhere. What it allows me to do in my retirement plan, and even that example, is I can actually stay invested in the market. I can be more aggressive than I may have otherwise been in my investments and shoot for the stars, which over time has pretty much always worked for every investor. If you can stay invested, that's where compound interest takes over and gets you those returns. But if all of your money is in investments, then my first example where you just got that $1 million in stocks, that's not possible. That's not a prudent plan. You would have to take money out of the market and basically cap your upside that way. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but it's I think people too often get into this either or. And who knows? We have no idea what the future holds. And so I want different assets that act in different ways and are affected in different ways by Congress or markets or whatever, so that no matter what's happening in retirement, I have options and flexibility to manage my taxation and manage that risk while still staying fully invested.
I like that. So basically taking control of your own destiny and your own financial plan and not letting other people dictate it. Hey, man, take it from my man, Tom, 23 years in the game. He know what he's talking about, you all. He said he started off taking some lumps, but he ain't taking them no more. Hey, so Tom, let me ask you this, man. How can high earners legally reduce excessive tax exposure?
It's a tough one. So if you're a high earner and most of your income is W-2 income, like you're working for somebody else, there's really not much you can do. I mean, anything that you're deducting is usually for a reason. So obviously mortgage interest you can deduct. I'm oversimplifying here, but if there's anything you can deduct against, earning that income, great. You can defer taxation through 401ks or retirement plans where you can actually get a deduction on that income today. But the truth is W-2 earners are pretty limited. Now, if we're talking to entrepreneurs, oftentimes they're going to have a business where it's an LLC. So their income goes through that business. Now, again, if they didn't do any planning, that income is there's not much they can do. All they can really do is deduct business expenses. But there are some creative ways you can set it up. So I find businesses, once they start to have some profitability, maybe in the six figures, they actually can recharacterize the business as an S corp. So an S corp allows you to pay yourself that W-2 salary to a reasonable amount, but then the rest of it is a business distribution. Still taxable, but it saves you on some of the FICA and some of the additional payroll taxes that you'll be paying. Also, as a business, there are things that you can do. You'll see strategies like putting your kids on payroll, or there's the Augusta rule where you can rent out your house for business interests. There's certainly strategies that you can use where you bonus depreciate certain assets. So I think, for business owners, you want to talk to a CPA, and there's really a couple different kinds. If you're looking for a CPA to help you with some of these tax treatments, a lot of CPAs are glorified tax preparers. We call them historians. They're effectively just looking back at last year and they're doing the calculations for you and preparing a form that you bring to the IRS. They just tell you what you owe. But there are better ones, more consultative ones that'll actually take a look at everything and help you do some strategizing around how we reduce taxes moving forward. And those are the kinds that will take a look at your business and say, look, your business brought in $200,000 last year, but because of the way you're structured, you're paying taxes almost worse than it would be if you were just working for somebody for that amount. So those are the ones that can restructure it. So, on a podcast for me to give tax advice, it wouldn't be appropriate if we're talking to everybody. But that's the basic thing I'd be looking for is when you're talking to a CPA is, don't tell me about last year. Tell me about next year and the year after that. What are we doing today to stop the bleeding and make it so that, we're taking the most advantage? And usually you got to be a little forward thinking. It's hard to do that retroactively. You kind of have to plan ahead at least a few months or beyond, to start getting those advantages.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by CJ Moneyway Media, where podcast ideas become platforms. Through the Moneyway Lab Masterclass, CJ shares real lessons from the lab for creators building their voices brick by brick. From powerful guest conversations, storytelling that inspires growth. CJ Moneyway Media is about one thing, building legacy through stories. Learn more at cjmoneyway.com.
Music style.
And y'all heard it from Tom. He say, not sitting here giving people tax advice. He said it'll be appropriate because there's different levels to this. It's different steps, man. So everything ain't for everybody. Hey, so Tom, man, let me ask you this, man. What should retirees actually fear and what's overblown?
What should they actually fear? Well, I think the example that I gave is they should fear a lot of volatility and they should fear market losses early in their retirement. So the best example in recent history was actually if you retired in the year 2000, you were feeling great. You just came off the dot-com bubble. You've quadrupled your money in like 5 or 6 years. And then the market lost money for 3 years in a row. Mm-hmm. So if all of your money was still in the stock market, not only were you taking money out of the account, but the market was also having losses for 3 years in a row on top of the losses that you were creating by taking money out. And it was very challenging. And then, of course, we got the big crash in 2008, where people literally lost it. The joke was your 401k is now a 201k because half your money was erased by the market losses. That's the obvious fear. But the truth is, if you're in good health, if you don't really have health issues or any expectation of a shortened life, people are living a very long time. Part of the issue with retirement planning is you might have to make your money last 30, 40 years. There are people living to 100 is not what it used to be. A lot of people live past 100 now. So think about that. Not only do you have to accumulate enough money to live on, but you have to make it last for 40 years, sometimes as long as your working career was. Mm-hmm. So that's a big one. And it multiplies all the risk. The longer you're on this planet, the more opportunities you have to endure a world war or the next pandemic, or fill in the blank of things that can happen. And also the political uncertainty gets bigger too. We kind of know what taxes are going to be in 5 or 10 years, regardless of what happens in Congress, but who knows what's going to happen in 30 or 40. It could be wildly different. So everything just becomes more and more uncertain the longer your retirement is. So I think sequence of returns risk, which is what I described, the potential to have significant losses early in retirement is a big one. Longevity is a big one. If you live a long time, that's a lot of planning to do. It can be done. And I think long-term care is a big one that a lot of people forget about. The national average, I don't actually know the number, but it's close-ish. The national average cost of care, if you need to be in a nursing home, can be like 10 to 15 grand a month. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of money for that, can erase a fortune for people and be a real detriment on the family dynamics too. You got family members taking care of you if they can. If there is enough money, even then, you're just decimating the family financially at a time when, you're probably trying to support a spouse too. So those are the big risks. And by the way, it's all fixable with financial products. Financial products that are not sexy, they're not fun to talk about. We're talking about life insurance, long-term care insurance, annuities, which, guarantee an income stream. They're not the fun cocktail party conversations, but everything I just described can be planned for. And those risks can be entirely shifted out of your portfolio with a good advisor. That's frankly why I'm doing what I'm doing, is trying to just be on that mission to spread the word so that everyone isn't just blindly throwing money into investments, but not really doing planning.
Let me ask you this, Tom, man. You said something that made me think about it. You was talking about the 2008 crash. I remember interviewing this guy when I first started, Sammy from New York. They don't like Boston either. But, he had like a $40 million investment, right? They was going to build like this complex or whatnot. And in 2006, they couldn't get the permits to build. And so in 2006, he was getting the loans and everything. So he was getting the money. Well, he was getting denied because they couldn't get the permits. But then they was able to get the permits, and then 2008 comes. You know what I'm saying? He say just lost everything. When I say he lost everything, you say taking care of family and this and that. He lost everything. Wife, dog, kids, cars, repossessed in front of this house, things of that nature. So my question to you is, when that time hit, what effect did it have on you, or what did you learn from that time?
When that hit, I actually was a financial advisor at the time. So I was in my 4th year of my career as a financial advisor. And when that hit, I remember everyone just being terrified. What happened was people realized how much risk there is out there. The truth is the market goes up 3 out of 4 years by itself. And if you do some diversification, you might lose money once out of every 5 or 6 years. It's been really good for a really long time. Someone recently said that people under the age of 40 have never actually felt a market crash. People think of 2020. Yeah, it went down during the pandemic for a few months, but then it came back. 2022, there were some losses, but that wasn't a real crash. People weren't scared. They just, lost a little bit of money. 2008 was the last time, almost 20 years ago, that people were actually scared. And what I learned about finance then, I was lucky to have it be early in my career, is it showed me and instilled in me not just a belief, but a knowledge that a proper financial plan needs to have assets that are accessible at any time and are not correlated to the market, and ideally are not exposed to taxes. And that's why I focus on whole life insurance. That's why that is one of the favorite assets of the wealthy and the mass affluent, to protect their assets for in times like that. Because what's happened is, in all times, in all major crashes, including the Great Depression, if you want to go to the biggest example in history, markets come back. Eventually, the people that were leveraging their assets up and taking risks they shouldn't have taken, those people get washed out, everything resets, and the market starts growing again. Society, builds value and grows. So the key is, it's not about rate of return. Everyone focuses so much on rate of return and ROI, and it's not about that. It's about making yourself into the kind of investor where your friend, that even if, an investment, a big investment, goes belly up, you still have assets available to you to do 2 things. One is to be defensive. Worst case, you've just got money swirled away that can't go down, that's unassailable by markets. So worst case, you got money to tap into. But I actually find the smarter ones, and you'll see that hedge fund investors, money managers will do this too, is there's always some dry powder. There's always some cash on the sidelines to take advantage of opportunities. Warren Buffett built his fortune not by betting on Google. He built his fortune by having billions and billions just sitting in cash waiting for opportunities. He calls it blood in the streets. Like when 2008 happens, he was on a buying spree, because he had money ready to do that. So being opportunistic on the upside is a big one too. So it was just fun working with clients. That it was not fun. The experience of that made me realize that having money that is not just market based is so important. And in today's world, the market just won't go down. Everyone's buying the dip, and they got crypto and their Robinhood accounts and GameStop and all this stuff that happened over the last several years. But the next big one's coming. And I think a lot of people they're not prepared for it. It's inevitable that it's going to come, and they're just not allocated properly. And I can understand it. They haven't really had any losses to speak of for almost 20 years. So why wouldn't you just keep going with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for that, man. Hey, you heard what he said. It's coming. It's not going to be avoidable, man. Whole life insurance, how you $200,000 sit to the side so you don't have to tap into your other finances, man. Hey, so Tom, man, this is my last question, man. I appreciate you dropping these nuggets on us today. Let me ask you this, man. What mindset shift must happen before financial clarity becomes possible?
Or financial clarity becomes possible?
Yeah.
It's a great question. I think the mindset shift has to go away from chasing return. And there's a phrase called being anti-fragile. Anti-fragile, the phrase means that you actually prosper in times where there's volatility and uncertainty. So the mindset is, if there's a way that I can shift risk out of my portfolio. So the mindset shift specifically around retirement planning, because I think that's most applicable to just about everybody, even business owners. Eventually you're going to retire or want that financial independence. I'll just share my story. So I'm a father with 2 kids. I can't imagine not leaving my kids anything, right? Mm-hmm. I could get to retirement and I could trade my money in for an annuity or some kind of pension style income that's guaranteed to not outlive, but my kids have nothing. That's not okay for me. For me, I need to know that I always have a bucket of money that I can access no matter what's happening in the market or tax system. I know as a man that I am a provider, I'm a protector of my people. I am always going to want to have significant dollars sitting there so that if I die or something like that, they're taken care of. I'm also worried about the long-term. I don't want to be a burden to my family if I require expensive ongoing medical care in my retirement. So for me, that planning, even today at 44 years old, I've already done most of that planning where I know when I get to retirement, I've got death benefits in place so that my loved ones are taken care of and they're going to have a better life than I had. I'm going to have significant dollars available that is not assailable by market forces. If the market crashes 60%, those dollars will go up that year. That policy and some of that planning actually creates additional money for me that I can spend to pay for that expensive ongoing medical care if I'm unlucky enough to need it. And by the way, it's very common that people need that. And here's the cool part is that all sounds boring. That all sounds like expensive, like Tom's spending all this money on insurance, but the types of strategies that I use, it doesn't cost me anything. I will recapture all of those dollars one way or another, either in bad times, using it while I'm alive, or in good times, if everything works out pretty well like it is today, those values just get higher and higher and higher and eventually create an even bigger legacy for that next generation. So the mindset shift, if I'm just boiling it all down, is it's not either or. It's not should I buy this stock or should I buy this bond or should I buy this house or should I buy this business? The answer is not or, it's and. Yes, you should buy that stock. Yes, you should buy that bond, and you should buy that house, and you should buy that business. Do all of those things because they all have synergies that work together. And to the extent that you can put guarantees in place, knowing that your worst case scenario, my worst case scenario is my kids are taken care of. They're not as rich as I would have liked them to be, but they still got a better life than I had when I was growing up. I'm good. Now I can go spend. And if I do it right, I'll probably have better outcomes because I'm not going to be playing scared in retirement. When I'm in my 60s and 70s, I'm still going to have pedal to the metal money invested in the market, trying to multiply those millions into multi-tens of millions. Whereas a lot of retirees can't because they have to play scared.
I like that, man. 2 things you said. It was the one about the kids, having your kids set up and financially taken care of, live better than you did. And then, the foresight, you said something that was real interesting, like God forbid, but as you get older, things happen. Bodies start going down. You say if you have to go through any kind of financial health issue, you know what I'm saying, that you're not being a burden and putting a burden on your family, man. And that's great foresight that, as you were saying earlier about people don't see things for coming. We don't see things like that, man. And definitely just sitting here listening to you today and some of the things that you're talking about, you got me over here thinking I need to restructure some things in my lifetime. So I appreciate you, bro. You know, say matter of fact, I was thinking when I get off this call with you, I'm getting on chat to start organizing some stuff and get some structure on some things that I need to do. So I appreciate you, man. So Tom, man, before we get out, man, leave us with one thing that's on your heart, man, that's on your mind, man, that you'd like to leave the audience with.
God, I shared so much with you today. What would that be? You know, I think what's on my heart is be prepared. I think too many people aren't prepared. And it's not just about how much you save, it's how you save and where it goes. So what's interesting to me is, and why I'm so driven to do this, is the peace of mind that gives you, the mental health that it gives you to know that things are okay, even if your assets are not earning as much as your friend is earning on their crazy investments. That is worth way more than any kind of financial metric can measure. So do the planning, get ahead of it, talk to an advisor who's having hard conversations with you about unsexy things. And, you know, usually, as we know in life, generally speaking, the hard path is the best path. And stay away from the financial entertainment out there and focus on the principles that have brought so many to the promised land for, you know, generations and generations.
Mm-hmm. Hey, as you heard him say, be prepared and check out Whole Life Insurance. Hey, follow Tom at TomWallTalks.com and grab his book, Permission to Spend. And if you're ready to optimize your health while building your wealth, don't forget the CJ Moneyway exclusive at ReadyXR. Link will be in the show notes. Hey, this is the CJ Moneyway Show, where purpose is the blueprint and legacy is the goal. This your boy CJ Moneyway with my man Tom Wall. Until the next time, we out of here. Peace.
You've been listening to the CJ Moneyway Show. Where real stories, real lessons, and real perspective come together. Remember, move with patience, move with purpose. That is the mindset of a panther. Until next time, keep building your legacy brick by brick by brick by brick.
Music style.